Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo, and this episode reflects the current mood of the nation, and I'm talking about 22 years of uninterrupted democracy and 6 years of the Buhari administration. There's absolutely no doubt that much has been achieved, and so much more needs to be addressed as well. We'll also take up the issue of ongoing constitutional reforms, and our experts will bear his mind on the subject matter. My colleague Elizabeth Omoru has also got something lined up for you. Elizabeth?
Well, this week we will beam our searchlight on the Child Rights Act of 2003, which has not been fully domesticated in some states in Nigeria. How does this affect our children, and who protects a Nigerian child from all forms of violence? This will be our focus on the media review segment.
Very well, then let's get started. We'll get right into it and discuss the planned constitutional amendment, the rationale and why previous attempts may or may not have made significant impact. Nasara Umar Kogo is a lawyer and public affairs analyst, and together we shall throw up salient issues regarding constitutional reforms. Welcome to the program.
It's my honor to be with you. Well done.
The Constitution is often described as the foundation of any democratic nation because it draws from an aggregate and a coalition of the people's aspirations and dreams. Please begin by drawing the distinction between the Constitution and a law. But most importantly, whether or not you agree with those who say that the 1999 Constitution fails in respect of being a product of the people and is therefore bereft of an agreement by Nigeria's multiple nationalities.
Well, first of all, legalized assembly of rules and regulations for the conduct of orderliness in the society is what we mean by law. And when you are talking about the Constitution, you are talking about structural setting of the society, the institutional structural setting, the powers, the limitations, the liberties, and limitations. These are the things that are embodied in the Constitution. A Constitution is an assembly of particular structure and rules guiding the operations of those structures. In other words, it is something that is not static unlike law. A law is something that comes with penalties and the rest, but the Constitution goes with the dynamism of the power play over a period, and that is the reason why periodically the quest or the urge for amendments will now rise up.
Okay, and so when the Constitution says, we the people, what exactly does that speak to?
Well, paradoxically, it means the entirety of the citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But in a constitutional democracy, like ours, it is the representatives of the people that are to speak on behalf of the people.
Okay.
In the Constitution of 1999 was to be evolved. Vividly, I remember during the former head of state, Abdusalami Abubakar, concerted efforts were made, assembly of statesmen into a congregation for them to come and assemble the document, the book called the Constitution. These people sat down, did the constitutional review of the previous constitutions, the 1963 constitutions and the 1979 constitution, most principally, together with all the developments that happened over the period, and then giving a semblance of pictorial shape of the type of democratic structure we want to entrench. And then as a result of which the draft constitution went into a lot of discussions, a lot of consultations, a lot of professional bodies were asked to scrutinize. The constitution went round geopolitical zones, round the respective states, town hall meetings and the rest, for people to give their inputs. And that is the reason why...
You're talking about the 1999 Constitution?
Yes, it marvels me when people say that it didn't get its sovereignty from the people. Then after all those rigmarole at the end of it, the first work the National Assembly did in 1999 was legalization of the document. That was the first thing they did. They adopted it. The grand norm of the Federal Republic of Nigeria was to move democratic operations. So it is a legitimate document. And the same constitution, if you look at it carefully, it has embodied the procedure and the technicalities that should be entrenched infringed for you to go into any amendment process. Precisely, I'm talking about sections 8 and 9 of the Constitution.
Bearing in mind the distinctions between a unitary constitution and a federal constitution, I would ask you a padded question now. One, is it possible to say that the pre-1996 constitution, I mean that of 1963 now, is more federal, more robust than the current constitution? And two, well, you already gave me an allusion of where you stand with regards to the 1999 constitution, but do you align with those who think that the 1963 constitution may be preferable for use, considering agitations by some groups, of course, with amendment to reflect that we have more states now, not just regions?
No, the hysteria under which people are banging on 1963 constitution really cannot have a watertight place to sit under the current dispensation. 1963 constitution was diametrically different from the 1999 constitution, especially when you come to the issue of fiscal federalism. That is the central focus of agitations by many people, the issue of derivation of the money and the rest. 1963 constitution came with a lot of inconsistencies and with a lot of problems. Principally speaking, it was those inconsistencies in the 1963 constitution were part of those things that even jumped Nigeria and plunged us into the 30-month civil war that led to the loss of over 3 million people. Principally speaking, under the 1963 constitution, its main distinction with 1999 constitution is that the states are the repository authority regarding whatever economic empowerment that is there on their land. In other words, the states are the ones to keep custody and the benefits of whatever is endowed in their land, and then they give the a residue or a particular percentage to the federal for the maintenance of the federal umbrella, which is the opposite of which is what we are having in the current dispensation, whereby everything that belongs, everything that is there in the land belongs entirely to the federal government, and then the federal government through fiscal allocations committee will now be making a sharing formula which will go to the states and to the local government. But even here, there are a lot of inconsistencies. For example, during the Galliena-Abba period of democratic experiment at the National Assembly, there was the merger of the onshore and offshore derivation, something. The offshore is the one that is in the sea, and the onshore is the one that is on the land. But about 72% of all the oil we are having is derived from the sea. And in the sea, you don't have geographical boundary to determine which state owns what. Never minding the nautical miles of about 200 meters into the sea that still belongs to the federation. But fundamentally, there is no structural setting to determine which states own what, on the basis of which you now come about the sharing formula and the rest. But nevertheless, it is like that in the interest of national unity, national cohesion, national stability, and national decorum. I believe it is like that. So all those that all these agitations people are making is centered on economic derivation. Whether somebody will call it constitutional reforms, what do you call it, restructuring, whatever them you will call it, is centered on that aspect. And if we were to even go by that, it will go a long way in stabilizing the DC, but in stabilizing the country if you go by that. That time, I think, if I can remember correctly, it used to be 50-50. 50 to the derivation state and 50 to the federal government. If we can still replicate that in the interest of peace, probably it will erode the dictum of laziness we are seeing regarding our state. Yes, virtually if you remove Lagos, Kano, probably rivers and cross-river states. If you remove probably these states, revenue generation is now a matter of a history. It is no more being practiced by the state governments. Instead of them to really, the greater number of the governors are essentially relying on federal
on the center.
On the center. So by the time you now put it back, say, whatever is in your land, you should be able, for example, the entirety of Northwest, it has a lot of richness of road, diamond, blue diamond, gold, uranium, and a lot of other things. The same thing when you go to the next is sapphire is there, aquamarine is there, quarantine is there, nickel is there, a lot of other things are there, vitamin is there, gas is there, and the rest. The same thing when you go to the southwest, it has richness in solid minerals, more even richer than even the other two regions I have mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The same thing if you go to the south and southeast. We have now forgotten even about the coal of the southeast. We have forgotten about the tin and columbide of Jos Plateau. Jos essentially we are relying on federal government to bring out money. So by the time you now go into that, I rarely see the situation whereby everybody will be sit up. It will be the determinant of the quantum of money you will have to spend will be based upon the determinant of the quantum of resources you explore, and then by the end of it you harness the money with which to go about. And then even if you want to go into creation of 1,000 local government areas, go about creation whatever. It is the internal part of your revenue generation
that would now determine how it's administered. I hear you clearly, Minasra. I would love to give you a breather, saying that, I mean, you're quite the talker, you're quick at it as well. But then, unfortunately, I would like for us to move ahead and real quick too. And I do have a feeling that you're a fan of alternative culture of doing things the right way, and I mean doing the right thing the right way. And so I'll ask you this. We have had constitutional reform processes since the 4th National Assembly or so. And I understand how painstaking and clearly expensive the process can be. I would also concur and strongly too that constitutional reforms is a function of the National Assembly, and not that of a national confab put together to duplicate the same efforts of the National Assembly. And recall that these are my thoughts. So I'll need yours on how best to get optimum results. And the quickest too, in terms of these ongoing National Assembly hearings on the review of the 1999 Constitution. I noticed that over the years, both chambers have often held different hearings at separate times, oftentimes within the same zones. And I mean, they're not picking up from where others stopped. We know there are documents on previous hearings. I mean, so why is there a lacuna? Why are they not picking up from where the last or previous processes stopped? Wouldn't that have made the process a lot more quicker?
You see, democracy is a vehicle for nation building. No nation in the world, can prosper better than the quality of its own actors. In other words, the political power players. Constitutional amendments in Nigeria, we rarely leave it in the hands of the politicians. But that is the reason why we don't get it right. The Constitution of the United States of America is not more than 10 pages. But the United States of America has stable democracy because of the quality of the policy implementers it has. They have people who have United States of America over and above their individual selves, over and above any primordial consideration, whether it's tribe, whether it's religion, whether it's color, whether it's ethnic, whatever consideration. Now, amendment of the Constitution should be given to statesmen. It is not just because you are a member of the National Assembly or just because you are a lawyer. No. It's a work of statesmen. Statesmen are the ones to superintend amendments of the Constitution. Agreed the Constitution as per sections 8 and 9 predicated all amendments in the favor of in the hands of the National Assembly. But the same National Assembly, if you take it, it is more or less like is a ritual. Every year, some billions of naira is being budgeted for amendment of the Constitution. It has been like that, and paradoxically in the name of trying to amend the Constitution. But in the real sense of it is just a drain pipe. Is not in any way geared toward amendment of the Constitution. Let me give you practical examples. For example, of what merit, especially during the Senate leadership of David Mark, you see traditional rulers, religious leaders, you see people from different parts of the country coming in vehicles, in convoy. They want to deliver documents. They want a state to be created. They want this thing to be done. They want this thing to be done. Some of them even get killed in the process, in accidents. So why should you be deceiving the citizenry? There is no need, for example, the current going around your political zones, going around the states. There is nowhere in the Constitution that it says you should go into doing such things because you want to amend the Constitution. Our Constitution is robust, is super, is clear. If you want even upon, I, as humble as I am, can amend this our Constitution in 1 hour. This is not anything big to warrant spending billions of naira that we are spending. But the important thing is, if you take the provision of sections 8 and 9, let me give you the scenario of this. How simple is it?
Do you mean the procedure now for amending the Constitution?
The procedure is different from what we are seeing, from what we are being practicing. Therefore, all these budgetary things we are seeing, every house of National Assembly will now bring about its own deputy senate.
Don't you think there's a reason for that? Because they've been accused of not getting the buy-in of the people in previous exercise.
No matter what the nation will say, the Constitution is the ground norm. You must subject yourself to the dictates of the constitutional stipulation. The Constitution clearly, like I said, even somebody who is not a layman can read it. Section 8 and 9 says, for example, if you want a creation of a state,
yes.
Let us say you want give me an imaginary example of any state.
Anioma State, for instance.
State. From which state?
From Delta.
Fine and good. You want Anioma State. If you want Anioma State, all the representatives of the enclave that wants Anioma State, the councillor, the local government chairman, local state assembly members, House of Representatives, Senate. If you have governor from the same enclave, yes. If you have president, yes. All of them will have to sign a paper, yes, we are demanding for a Anioma State from the present-day Delta State. Then they now take it and then bring it through the chairman of the National Assembly, who is the Senate President, who will within 2 weeks' time make copies and send to the respective distinguished members. The members will now deliberate upon it. You need to have 2/3 of them, yes, we want it, it is legitimate to be created, without another member saying, yes, create a Anioma State on the condition that you will give me Katagum State, or you will give me Gorara State, or you will give me any other state. Now, on the basis of which they will now consider it, when you have the 2/3, then you now go back there and ensure that you don't have any opposition regarding this thing from the citizens of the state there. After you get that one, then you now take it to the Independent Electoral Commission, INEC. INEC should conduct what is called referendum to determine that, yes, you have 2/3 of the members of, before even going to the INEC. Immediately the National Assembly gets that one. National Assembly will now send it to all the states houses of assembly in Nigeria. You have 36 states. So all the states houses of assembly, 36 of them, would now deliberate and discuss and have 2/3 of their members. And you need 2/3 of the states houses of assembly, which is 24 states. When you have the 24 states, you now come back to the National Assembly, on the basis of which the National Assembly will ask the Independent National Electoral Commission to go and conduct referendum. Conduct referendum, yes. How many number of people do we have as the population of Delta State, for example? If, for example, you have 7.5 million, then go and have a referendum of yes or no for this creation. We need 2/3 of the members. If you now zoom your number, maybe you are only 3 million, you decided to say you are 7.5 million. That is where you will be caught, because you will have to have 2/3 of 7.5 million, which is 5 million, voting in support of the decision. And there is a lacuna there. The Constitution did not say of eligible voters. Did not speak about it. So it is talking about this in the number. So whether it's a small child, that time you will have the freedom to vote. I don't know how they will do that magic. At the end of it, when you have the majority, you now come back to the National Assembly, and then you deliberate upon it in the 2 chambers, joint sitting, and then you have 3/4, on the basis of which, when you have that one, you now stamp it that, yes, we have gotten a draft approved by the National Assembly. You take it to the President, and the President, remember, he will not rush in signing. He will have to make consultation from some members of the National Council of State regarding, is it in the interest of the stability, is it in the interest of peace, is this in the interest of national progression and national development, in tandem with Section 15(1) of the Constitution, on the basis of which you will then go ahead and then sign it. It is at that level. you have amendment of the constitution by creation of a new state. Now, this is the procedure. There is nowhere they said, take it, go around into public cities, go down into public hearing. If the constitution wanted it that way, it would have stated it. It is not there. Therefore, there is no need spending all these billions if the interests and the patriotism of the nation is in the minds of the DC. But anyway, those sittings are probably to justify the budgetary DC. And some of the provisions too, you don't even need constitution. You don't even need this.
Yes, I was incidentally I was going to come to that because you've thrown up a couple of issues, and it's quite interesting how you've thrown up the issue of the procedure. I'll still take you down the line. I will still we'll revisit this whole issue about the public hearings in the zones, but you just hold on. And just before I let you go, I would revisit that issue with you. I'm quite fascinated at how you've outlined the various processes for amending the Constitution and how they vary between procedures specified for different aspects of the Constitution, whether by, you mentioned 2/3, there's also the 4/5 majority, 2/3, as well as the president's refusal of assent. There's also a procedure that follows after that. But we've seen all of this play out over the years. I mean, the 1999 Constitution is being utilized as amended in 2011. Again, I realize how cumbersome the process is. I mean, knowing, for instance, and I recall you mentioned that of the U.S. U.S. is a country with over 200 years of democracy, and they've only amended their constitution just about 18 times. But given the agitation for a more people-driven constitution, do you think there is any chance for real changes this time around for issues like, I know you've mentioned some of them, devolution of power, state police, fiscal federalism? That was one of the issues you mentioned. Also the issue of local government autonomy.
If you want state police, for example, it is not anything superficial. It's not anything difficult having state police. But the procedure and the manner of approach is wrong. You don't need to
you make it sound so easy, but this is a process we began for almost 22 years.
We have delusion of intelligentsia in Nigeria. We have poverty of ideas. These are some of the problems that are disturbing us. You don't need to gather 10 governors because you need state police, before you need this thing. It is simple. Amend Section 153 of the Constitution. You work by Section 153 that talks about national security, that talks about National Defense Council, National Security Council, Nigerian Police Council. There, the governors are equally members. There, and then you can alter the structure of the Nigerian police setting. Bearing in mind Sections 214 to 216 has already said that the Nigerian police is the one responsible for ensuring security across the length and breadth of Nigeria. Take, for example, let me give you another example of in the United States. All the United States has 27 components of security machineries in the country. The immigration, the custom, the SSS, all these are under
Homeland
the police.
Security.
But in Nigeria, you said the police under Sections 214 to 216 is the one responsible for territorial internal security, yet they don't have the control over the porosity of our borders. We have about 10,000 alleged illegal immigration entrance into the decent, and as a result of which you have a lot of all sorts of people from neighborhood coming in to create havoc and the problems in the country. You are not in any way domesticating, derogating, say, the immigration services under the police. So the police cannot be accountable for that. The immigration, even because we are more interested in the revenue aspect they are bringing, we said they are under Ministry of Finance, not even internal affairs. So when you want to talk about that one, Section 153 talks about there is the National Security Council, the Nigerian Police Council. These are the ones that will now decide, yes, we need maritime police. We need border security police. We need cybercrime police. We need anti-terrorism police. All these are the type. We need state police. We need regional police. All these structures and the establishments, it is under those bodies when you now amend them, and then the bodies create the decision. They can just sit down during the meeting. They have the constitutional mandate and the power to say, yes, in the interest of the current security reality of the country, the National Security Council and the Nigerian Police Council and the Nigerian Defense Council, we have now decided to create the following new structures. These are the structures. This, as per the provision of Section 153. Then they should amend the provision of Section 214 down to 218 and 219. By the time you amend these issues, you have taken care of it. You have established state police, not for you to put the cart before the horse. You have already created a Matokun. You have already created the other one in Igbo land. Then you now come and say you want creation of state police. When you have already created it, you don't have the legitimacy and the power to create it, because you are members of that regulatory body that essentially is based with the responsibility of the creation of those establishments and those structures. So at times we over-amplify certain things that are really simple if we have the patriotic zeal and the interest to work on. What is important as far as the issue of policing is concerned is increase the numerical number of the police personnel. We have 385,000 police personnel in a country of 210 million Nigerians. The number is inadequate. Half of that number is securing the interests and the lives of Mr. Somebodies and their wives and their cronies. Half of that again is going there guarding multinational corporations, banks, a sensitive government establishment, and the rest.
So you don't dwell so much on just the police, because I raised a number of issues as well. I mean, local government autonomy is there.
Yes, local government autonomy, Section 7 of the Constitution is very clear.
Yes.
The autonomy there, not only autonomy, is an entrenched tier of government, is an independent tier of government. Where you have problem is there is a subsection under Section 7 that talks about fiscal management of the local government system, which is making the governors to exploit the window to create what is imaginarily called joint account, and then to be distant. Even the federal government, the executive order the president signed, I look at it as a diversionary. Why should you sign the executive order of the financial independence of local government, the state legislature, and the state judicial arm of the government? What you should do clearly is direct for the allocation to be going straight to the accounts of the local government system. Where they don't have those accounts, don't give them the accounts.
I don't think a lot of things, you've said a lot of things there, I don't take them for granted. You've said a couple of minutes ago, just when we started, that you could amend the Constitution in an hour if you're allowed to. You've said, yes. You've also said, you've also made it quite clear, and I think the viewer out there have heard you, that the constitutional amendment is not a big deal, more or less. Where are you laying the blame if we're having so much hard time getting it right? Are you laying it at the feet of the National Assembly?
No, I'm laying it as an inability of us to fill off a bridge of gap between the nation and the self. Greater number of those in privileged positions of authority look at it as an avenue for self-enrichment, as an avenue to develop themselves rather than entrenchment of national honor by serving diligently for the nation.
I'll leave it there.
So the quality is the problem.
Let's leave it there. But sometimes I get a sense, I think that the rigid nature or structure of our constitution is another issue.
And the constitution is not rigid.
It is rigid, because why the British and a country like Israel both have constitutions that are flexible, our federal system of governance, as prescribed by the Constitution, is rigid, and it stands above any other law. I did a bit of government, yes. So I have two questions for you, very quickly too.
Yes.
If we look at it in terms of constitutional political economy and the linkage between the structure of our constitution and the impact on economic performance, how does rigidity benefit a country like Nigeria? And two, how strongly do we apply unconventional, unwritten conventions, as it were, as part of our constitutional process, since ours is typically a written constitution?
Well, I will start with the second question. Application of unwritten conventions, unwritten practices, it is only going to be successful depending on the mindsets of the power players. For example, the issue of executive orders. The president has signed so many executive orders. With respect to the sanctity of him as far the #1 chief executive officer of the country as far Section 130 is minimal. For example, he has signed the executive order for the independence of the judiciary and the legislature. Look at the judicial workers up to now on strike. The governors have given adamant to that. Look at issue of the independence of the local government structure. It has given adamant they have given adamant attention to that. So long we don't respect the sanctity of the hegemony of the constituted authorities, so long we cannot get quality results regarding whatever conventions or whatever. And that is the reason why you look at it as if it is rigid. It's not rigid. The fiscal discipline and bureaucratic operations of our democratic governance is what we are lacking. That is the problem with Nigeria, not any other thing. We need to really see to the possibility of entrenchment of discipline in the way we run our democracy. Entrenchment of discipline, entrenchment of decorum, entrenchment of respect to the Constitution. We have one of the most superlative constitutions in the world, but operationally is very poor, because we operated in most cases like upside down. Take a very good example I want to give is that when you have what do you call it? When you have entrenched the local government system, before 1975-76, during the conference that evolved the local government system, you have a sound system of administration by the local authorities, by the traditional rulers. We now took it up and said, okay, bring about democratically elected structure so that the government will be closest to the people. We said we should bring about the decision in such a way that even a councillor, in order of protocols, is even superior to your paramount ruler. We now change that. We now change that. Suddenly, you now decide to take it away. That local government system you are seeing is taking care of the bridge between government and the governed. The citizens are seeing local government as a semblance of them being part and parcel of government. Then the local government chairman will now use such money to be able to have direct contact with the grassroots leaders, with the traditional religious leaders, cultural leaders, so that whatever is happening, he will be in the know. He will be in the control of all these vigilante groups, all these local security arrangements. He will be in control of that. Now you have taken that away. It will give a gap of who is the one to be reporting. How many people are having the privilege of seeing the governor directly to report an incident to him? You have removed the tier that should be doing that responsibility. How many people are having the opportunity of having, delivery of federal things? Is it fertilizer? Is it seeds? Is it petty workshop and the rest from the federal government? You don't have it. You have to go through the office of the governor. The governor cannot come, even if the governor wants to come to the citizenry. By the time he comes with his sirens bombarding the people, everybody will come to running and go into his own house, and nobody will be seen at the theater to welcome the governor. So we need democracy to have a marriage of the people's interests and aspirations. That tier of the government is what is taking of that. Control of the local markets, control of burial park, control of street namings, everything in such a way that whenever somebody foreigner comes in, it is very easy for the person who is heading the street to identify him and report to the village head, who will now go to his councillor or his local government chairman and inform him, which is difficult for him to inform to. So these are some of the things that aggravated this issue of insecurity, this issue of unemployment, this issue of disillusionment, this issue of many things. Remember even the amount of money when they used to publish federal allocations to local government. The lowest local government is the one that earns about 250 million. That is the lowest local government. So imagine the totality of such money. You are contracting it into one, you are amassing it, taking it away for the entire local governments of the area of the states over a given period of time. Automatically, that money that should go there for the service of the grassroots citizenry is normally taken away.
It's interesting how you're the one directing. It's interesting how it will seem like you're the one directing this conversation, and now you keep bringing up critical elements, which makes it even more fascinating. You brought up the issue of local government.
Yes.
You've talked about citizen participation. So I would like to digress a bit and talk about citizen participation in governance and the exercise of political rights. I have noticed consistently that the percentage of voters who determine the outcomes of elections here in Nigeria, whether national or subnational, I won't put a figure to it, but you and I have an idea of how minimal they are.
Yes.
The figures have been. The culprit here, the culprit here is not the lack of political rights, because we do have that, but rather the fact that the people do not exercise that right.
Yes, people do not want to exercise the rights because they don't see the commensurate benefits of exercising the rights. People do not see the commensurate benefits.
But then how do we now, I guess that would now be my question to you. How do we, talking about economic security now and the guarantee, how can economic security guarantee active public political participation?
Well, so long we now decide to imbibe on contractocratic, kleptonic, bourgeoisie democracy, which is centered on accumulation and making money, which is centered on not even the values of what you can offer, which is centered on your ability to finance yourself financially. In Nigeria now, if no matter how excellent you are, no matter how resource endowed you are, you have to use your money to even buy a form in millions to say that, yes, I want to express my interest. That is even the name they call it. Expression of interest, talk less of contesting. And then you spend a lot of money, so much so that it is a political game of investment. The politicians look at it as a means of investment. I made an attempt one time to have given exemplary representation to go to the National Assembly. But even the money to buy the form, I don't have. So my own constituency has lost the possibility of me giving them such quality of representation I claimed, say, probably I have. But in a situation whereby people in the Second Republic, take the Second Republic, for example, the First and the Second Republic, during these times around, it is your quality that is normally being compared with the aspirations, the manifestos of your political party to determine whether you are qualified to be given the flagship of representing your own constituency or representing your own party. In those times,
wait, no, please go ahead.
yes,
I was just going to say we're running out of time.
Let me give you an example that time.
Very quickly, a quick one.
Yes, for example, Shehu Shagari wanted to go to the National Assembly, but he was changed by the party. The party decided that this is what we want you to be. Tafawa Balewa wanted to go to the National Assembly. The party leader said, you are more qualified than me to become Prime Minister. Let's Ahmadu Bello, go and become. Umaru Musa wanted to go to the Senate, but he was called upon and said, you are a credible material, go and become my successor by President Obasanjo. We don't have such type of things anymore. We don't have statesmen. We have a poverty of statesmen in the game of affairs. That is the reason why you see political contractors, they are the ones that are in the interest of investing in order to drive benefits. And that is the reason why whenever they get elected, they normally forget about the citizens. They normally, how many of them normally remember their constituencies and go for a visit? We see so many people coming to Abuja in a taxi, and at the end, they now succeed in becoming the owners of luxurious aircrafts. We have seen them in Abuja. So we have to really think of politics as an avenue of service, as a service of trust. You are the vicegerent of God to transcend natural justice to the citizenry. You are the one responsible to bringing about the dream of the founding fathers, unity and faith, security, and good being of the country. This is the dream, but we have most people thinking about it that how much I spend will determine how much I gain. And that is the reason why they become superpower, that they are above the control of even their political parties. The political parties will be following them. You will see the chairman of the political party following a president looking for appointment as a minister. A son is looking for appointment as a minister, and that is so.
So that's why I'm sorry, but I mean I would let you land ordinarily, but I've just been directed to round off our conversation. We're completely out of time. We've got other segments and other guests as well on the program. I would have loved for this conversation to continue. I think we'll create another platform and bring you on so we can continue because this is an ongoing process, and it's something we should keep talking about until we get it right. I want to thank you so much, Menasa Uma Kogo, for lawyer and public affairs analyst, for coming on Insight. It's been a delight. It's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.
It's always my honor to assist in nation building. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is Elizabeth Omori with the Media Review segment.
Child rights are fundamental freedoms and the inherent rights of all human beings below the age of 18. These rights apply to every child, irrespective of the child's parents, legal guardians, race, color, sex, or creed. Children should have the same rights and should be given the same opportunity to enjoy an adequate standard of living. When the rights of a child is infringed upon, who fights for the child? Parents, society, government. My guest, Naima Sadiq, Member Board of Trustees, Young Ones Foundation, will deal on the issue before us. Naima, it's nice to have you join us on Insights.
Thank you for having me.
All right, in your own terms, how would you define the rights of a child? And when it is infringed upon, what do we do?
The right of a child comprises of not just provision of education, it comprises of both spiritual, mental, physical, and economical components. So I feel like the parents or the guardians of children need to look at all these components for a child to be wholesome. So you don't just look at one aspect, you have to look at everything holistically for you to have a wholesome individual.
Okay, is it limited to provision of education or other basic needs?
It's not just limited to education.
Okay.
It has to comprise of the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual guidance for the child. Because if you provide education for the child and the child is not mentally balanced, or the child doesn't have a very good upbringing at home, or even maybe physical or emotional stability, it's going to cause a lot of problems in society in the long run, because you don't know the person might be intelligent and have the capacity to do things academically, but then they won't be very balanced and they won't be accommodated in society perfectly.
Okay, I ask because just recently we celebrated children in Nigeria, but when parents fail, who has the responsibility to protect the child? Or rather, when the rights of a child is infringed upon, who has the right to protect the child?
When the rights of a child is infringed upon, I believe it's the duty of society as a whole, the parents, the community, to protect the rights of the child. Because a child might be for the parent, but at the end of the day, they leave the parents and go into the society and become members of the society. So we all have to do our parts in making sure that each and every child is a part of a community and seen as one whole part of a community.
I understand your foundation deals with the protection of children. Do we have firm laws protecting them? Do we have legislations backing them up?
Okay, the Young One Foundation adopted the United Nations Convention on Child Rights Act, and even though it's been adopted in 36 states, in 25 states of the 36 states, we still have issues with about 11 states. So they've not yet adopted this Child Rights Convention Act because of some customary laws or cultural barriers, which sometimes creates issues with adopting this Child Rights Convention laws. So the situation now is to make sure that all the 36 states adopt this Child Rights Convention rights act, so that everybody can be on the same page.
Don't you think this is a challenge to NGOs, the society, parents, and even the government?
It's a big challenge because the Child Rights Convention Act looks at the child and looks at the way we can protect children in the society. And because these things are not adopted in all the 36 states, the states that haven't adopted them, it's difficult for you to implement this. So if there's an issue in that state, it's difficult for you to implement justice or to go through the courts, or even though it's been adopted at the federal level, it's not been adopted at some state level. So it's difficult for you to go to those states to look for legal backing or justice for the children in those situations because of customs and traditions that are in those states.
How do we protect our children, really? Because they go to school, they go out.
We still have to let our children go to school. We can't keep them at home. So in this situation, it's just very essential for parents and the community as a whole to be very watchful and very careful with people that we allow into our homes. Or you have to be, when you go take your children to school, you have to be very careful with the people. The teachers and the school have to look at people coming into the school to pick the children, who is dropping the child, who is picking the child, who is in charge of the child, what are the rules in the school. As a parent, you have to look at what are the rules in the school. Are they going to allow anybody to just come in? Do they have adequate security for the school? Are they going to allow anybody to come and pick the child when it's closing time? Are there ID cards? Are there tags for the parents? So these are the things that we have to be very watchful about. And even when the child goes home, we have to be careful about people we keep at home, the security, the nanny, people have to have we have to have security checks before employing people, so we can make sure that whoever we have around us, we can always question them if things happen. So if, for instance, you have a nanny and you do not have security checks for the nanny and anything happens, you don't have anywhere to go back to or anywhere to turn to. So it's necessary for us to make our due diligence and have security checks and make sure that there's backing for anybody we are letting into our homes and our school and everything.
Okay. I understand you work with children at camps. How do you relate with them?
Most of the time when we go to these IDP camps, the children are very happy to see guests and people coming to help them because they know that something new is coming, something exciting is coming. So for instance, if you take a cooking class or maybe music or football, anything, it's just exciting for them, and then they're happy that at least they're recognized. It's not just a normal day. People remember them, and then people want them to have a better life.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the theme of this year's celebration of the Children's Day. It dwelt on COVID-19 and children. And we have children in IDP camps. How have you been able to walk around children knowing their nature and COVID-19, as well as the nature of COVID-19?
Okay. With children, it's not very easy to talk to them about these things because you can't tell them, don't touch your friends. So we have to just teach them hygiene, wash your hands every time. During the COVID-19 time, palliatives were provided. Hand washing stations were also provided. So anytime you go out, you're coming in, wash your hands, don't touch your eyes, don't touch your nose, wear your face mask. So you just have to keep on reinforcing and telling them these things over and over again so that at least they know something is happening and they need to be careful and take their hygiene more seriously.
More seriously. Now, before I let you go, there's an increasing spate of sexual violence against children. Do you look into that? How do you handle such cases?
We kind of create a safe space where it's easy for them to, if something happens to you, it's easy for you to come and talk to at least the person, the volunteer in your group and say, oh, something happened to me. And then it's now incumbent on the volunteer or whoever is in charge to take this up and fight for the rights of the child, because for the child to have the confidence to come and talk to you, then it means a lot. So if there's any situation, we encourage people, children, anybody to talk, speak up so that your case can be heard and a solution can be provided and the culprit can be brought to book, hopefully.
Okay. What about the Child Rights Act, the UN Child Rights Act? How do we apply this act?
Right now, we're trying to make sure that the children are given a safe space to communicate whatever the issues are, whatever is happening, so that they can have a very good physical, mental, and emotional balance in their homes and in their schools, wherever they are.
Naima, I would like to ask you this because it's really, we see children around, and then in the African setting, when you have a child, that child is not just your child, it is everybody's child. But really, how safe are our children in society?
Times have changed, I'll say. In the olden days, we could say that the child is the child of a community and not just the parents. But the situation in the community now is there's a lot of distrust in the neighborhood and everywhere. So you have to talk to your children, first of all, and tell them to be very comfortable in talking to you. If anything happens, they should talk to their parents. And the parents have to give their children listening ears. They have to be there for the children and be very watchful. Talk to the children and make sure you know what's happening in their day-to-day life.
All right, Naima Sadiq, member, Board of Trustees, Young Ones Foundation. Thank you so much for coming on Insights.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
At the onset of the program, I did make mention of the current mood of the nation, and I meant the 6 years of the Buhari administration. And yes, there are many things to be grateful for, and yet many other areas with subsisting challenges. One area I would like for us to take a look at is the finance and economy. And my colleague Leah Katung-Babantunde would help us give perspective to that.
The start of the Buhari administration was on a shaky economic note, as the world at that time was in serious crisis. This saw oil prices declining sharply. By 2016, Nigeria entered her first recession in decades owing to weak revenue generation. However, it was short-lived as Nigeria spent her way out of recession. Growth continued marginally, and just when all seemed set for an all-round improvement, coronavirus showed up late 2019 in Wuhan, China, and will change the world perhaps forever. The consequences were felt across the globe as productivity dropped, travels ceased, trade halted, offices shut down, the streets gradually went empty, and life moved virtual. The world went into a recession, and for Nigeria, it was the second in 5 years. The rebuilding process involved both fiscal and monetary authorities who kept churning out policies aimed at reflating the economy, widening the sources of income, creating jobs, and curbing inflation.
Our target is to grow this economy to a 7% GDP in the next 5 years, and also to increase our revenue base, which was at 8% by 2019 to 15% over the next 5 years.
Social incentives increased with some forbearance. The states also received moratoriums and credit lines from the federal government and the central bank. Public debt increased to meet the infrastructure deficit made more pronounced by the pandemic.
Because of COVID, that same last year, we quickly had to rework the books. Not only because revenues dropped, but now you now suddenly realize you needed hospitals, you needed all kinds of facilities, you needed palliatives because of the lockdown, people were shut down. So your expenditure increased while your revenues dropped. Could we have said, no, we won't do anything?
The need for more liquidity continues to be met. On the other hand, inflation has also been on a steady rise and only halted in April after 21 months. Nigeria exceeded recession in the fourth quarter of 2020, though marginally. It was a short-lived recession, and at the end of the first quarter of 2021, GDP numbers again inched up, this time by 0.51%. The slow pace of growth, pressure on the nation's reserves, increased borrowing, and slower than expected food output, along with some external factors, were responsible for the central bank's decision to hold rates at the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting, despite some downward movements in key statistics.
On the output side, what should we be doing? Let us use our development finance tools to boost output by ensuring that liquidity and funding is made available at concessionary rates to employment generating and output stimulating sectors of the economy.
The private sector has continued to be an integral part of the recovery journey, and channeling youth energies for productive ventures is a shared ideology with the government.
The country, we need to come together and agree that we really don't have any other country. I carry one passport. Most of us do. We have nowhere else to go. So we need to come together and ensure we build a country we're proud of.
We also have a duty as private sector leaders that even despite the challenges, we have to find a structured way to support government policy.
The COVID-19 economic response was worth 2.3 trillion naira through the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Program, NESP. The targeted credit facility by the central bank has just been increased to 400 billion naira from 300 billion naira. COVID relief support recently hit 25 billion naira as vaccines availability increases, while development partners have also continued to support the economy.
The populations are growing of young people, and so we're looking for ways to have private sector climates that are inviting to new businesses and that allow job creation.
Economic managers are optimistic the desired growth that is inclusive will be achieved in the near term.
And that's it on this episode of the program. Do join us same time next week for more on Insights. My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms. Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA